Here begins the tale that grows in silence and wrestles with forgotten names. The Winds of Agata, When Rivers Speak in Tongue was Part 15, The Tree That Was Afraid to Die. Chapter 1, The Whisperwood. In the heart of the Akanulu forest, where the wind forgets its own name and shadows move against their roots, stood a single tree called Aluma. Unlike the other trees, Aluma had eyes in its bark and a heartbeat beneath its trunk. Why? Because Aluma was once human. Long ago, it had been a prince who betrayed his people for power, and as punishment, the Earth Mother turned him into a tree, not for one generation, but until he chose to die willingly. But Aluma was afraid. Afraid of endings. Afraid of what waited after bark and root. So, he lived on. For 700 years. Chapter 2, The Roots That Riamekaya, Yukam, Dunmaji, and Kamjika entered Akanulu following a map drawn in moss. They were chasing a legend. Greater than in the heart of a silent forest, there lives a tree that remembers the beginning of time. As they approached Aluma, he wept leaves of gold and sang in whispers only Yukam's drum could answer. Greater than you came to fell me? Aluma asked. Greater than no, Kai replied. We came to understand why you still stand. Aluma confessed, greater than I was cursed to remain until I willed my own end. But I do not wish to vanish. What am I if not rooted? Dunmaji knelt and said, greater than even the tallest tree becomes soil. And soil becomes song. Chapter 3, The Harvest of Regrets. To free Aluma, they needed to gather 3 things. 1. A leaf from a tree that mourned its own fruit. 2. A branch carried willingly by the wind. 3. A seed born without shadow. Their journey led them through the grove of echoing sorrows, where trees recited their regrets in hushed tones. The wind split hills, where air ran like wolves and stole voices. The hollow orchard, where fruit grew but left no memory of its tree. They returned with the relics. But the final act had to come from Aluma. Greater than you must speak your own ending, said Nkamjika. Only you can undo your root. Chapter 4, The Confession. Aluma's voice became wind through branches. He spoke, greater than I betrayed my brother for the throne. I let my people starve so I could feast. When I was turned to wood, I thought it cruel. Now I know it was mercy, for it let me witness the world I nearly destroyed grow without me. He paused. Greater than, but now let me fall, so something else may rise. And as those words passed his lips, the leaves caught fire, not in flame, but light. The bark split open. From within emerged not death, but rebirth. Chapter 5, The Child of the Seed. Where Aluma once stood, a small boy sat cross-legged. Naked. New. Bright-eyed. He looked at Kaya and said only, greater than I dreamt of leaves. The Earth Mother had granted Aluma a new form, not as punishment, but as second chance. The villagers of Akanulu took him in, naming him Josie, meaning the healing that remains. And near the child, a sapling grew, Aluma's final gift. It whispered every night to the wind. Chapter 6, The Lesson of the Wood. Years passed. The forest flourished. And Kai etched Aluma's story into the bark of sacred drums. Whenever a tree falls in Akanulu, a child plants a new one and whispers, greater than not goodbye, but begin again. And the forest sings in wrestling waves, greater than even endings are just older names for hope. Here awakens the tale where the sun feared a name and shadows wandered without masters. The Winds of Agata, When Rivers Speak in Tongue was Part 16, The Girl Whose Shadow Refused to Follow Her. Chapter 1, The Girl Called Kamara. In the sun-washed village of Ibiala, everyone was born with a shadow. Everyone but Kamara. At birth, her mother screamed not from pain but from fear. There was no dark mirror beneath her. No outline when she stepped into the sun. No echo of form when firelight danced. The elders said, greater than a child without a shadow is not a child, but a question. She grew, but never cast shade. Crops near her withered, Goats fled. Rain refused to fall on her roof. But Kimara laughed like a flute and wept like a thundercloud. She lived as though the world owed her brightness. Until the day her shadow returned. Chapter 2, the night that followed Herod came during the Festival of Masks, when moonlight bloomed like milk across Ibiala. Kimara danced with silver bangles around her wrists when suddenly, the drummers stopped. Because beneath her feet, a shadow danced, not hers but darker. Too dark. Too hungry. It didn't follow her movements. It moved before her. Guided her. And then it whispered. Greater than, you left me in the land of forgetting. Now I have returned. We must finish what we began. Kimara fainted. When she awoke, the elders called for her banishment. But Kaya, Nkamjika, Yukam, and Unmaji had seen this kind of magic before. They knew it wasn't a curse. It was a summons. Chapter 3, the land of unfollowed shadows. To understand Kimara's shadow, they journeyed with her to the Obodondu, the land between death and dream. A place where shadows without owners hunted memories. Voices hid in jars suspended from trees. Mirrors spoke in riddles, demanding you remember what you tried to forget. There, they met a being called Nzanri, the keeper of the unfollowed. He told them, greater than Kimara was not born without a shadow. She gave it away. As a spirit, before birth, she bartered her darkness for joy. But joy without pain is hollow, and light without shadow is blind. The shadow wanted balance, not revenge. Chapter 4, the trial of reflection. To reclaim her shadow willingly, Kimara had to walk 3 paths. 1. The path of regret, where each step revealed a sorrow she caused. 2. The path of joy, where she relived every happiness that had no cost. 3. The path of choice, where she would decide, live whole or remain hollow. Along the way, Kimara saw the truth, how her laughter sometimes silenced the grieving. How her brightness left others in blindness. How her joy once mocked her mother's mourning. At the final path, her shadow stood before her. It held a mirror. Greater than, do you see me now? It asked. Kimara looked. Greater than, yes. And I want to walk with you. They merged. Chapter 5, the return to Ibiala. Kimara walked into the sun. And for the first time, the ground darkened beneath her. People stepped back. Not from fear, but from awe. Because her shadow now shimmered, not black, but midnight blue, like a sky that held stars. She became the story keeper of Ibiala, teaching children to listen to their shadows. She said, greater than, your shadow is not your curse. It is your balance. Don't flee it. Dance with it. Chapter 6, the shadow dance. Years later, on the Festival of Masks, a new tradition began. Children dance with lanterns, casting long shadows on the earth. And when the drums beat fast, the village chants, greater than, may your light be true. May your shadow be near. May you walk with both, and forget neither. And in the wind, the old shadows whisper, greater than, Kimara walks. Whole. Bright. True.
Here the story sharpens like a blade forgotten in the earth, where names are weapons and silence is exiled. The winds of Agata, when rivers speak in tongue. Part 17, the warrior who forgot his own name. Chapter 1, the man who came from the river. He found him in the shallows of the river Adato, washed up like driftwood, breathing but nameless. He had no scars, no voice, no memories, only a jagged bone dagger strapped to his thigh and a broken leather band on his wrist that read, Ichakiri, the pack that devours. The villagers of Amadim took him in and called him Obioma, meaning the good heart, because he defended children from wild dogs with only his fists. But each night, Obioma would awake screaming a name he couldn't remember, clutching his head as visions flashed, a great battlefield drowned in red dust. A black lion pierced by a golden spear. And a woman crying beside a broken throne. He was not just a man. He was a forgotten storm. Chapter 2, The Echoes of War. When Kaya, Nkemchika, Yukam, and Dunmaji heard of the man with the war cry in his dreams, they sought him out. Yukam beat a sacred rhythm on his Ngwansi drum, one known to awaken lost bloodlines. And the man staggered. He whispered, "Greater than a keg, that was my name. I was the Fang of Nzum." But the moment he remembered, smoke rose in the east, the smoke of war. The ancient kingdom of Nzum, long thought dead, had returned under a warlord called Arorikpa, the Bone King. And he was looking for his missing general, the one who betrayed him at the final battle. Akeg. Chapter 3, The Memory Well. To retrieve the rest of his past, Akeg and the others journeyed to the Well of Knowing, hidden beneath the Stone Ma Hills. There, the water remembered all he drank from it. But its price was high. To recall everything is to feel everything again. Akeg drank. He screamed. Memories flooded in. He had once led the armies of Nzum, slain kings, burned villages, until he fell in love with Queen Tamira, the widow of his slain enemy. He refused to kill her child, and for that, Arorikpa branded him a traitor and cast him into the river chained. The river had spared him, but memory had not. Chapter 4, The Trial of Nemesto. Reclaim his honor and prevent war. Akeg had to face Arorikpa, who had become more spirit than man. But first, he had to face himself. He entered the sacred grove of Ogbunik, where the spirits of all he had slain waited. One by one, they appeared. He knelt before each. Greater than I killed you in war. I cannot undo it. But I will carry your names. He carved them into his skin, over 400 names, each stroke a vow of remembrance. He emerged from the grove with blood and silence. And now, he was ready. Not just to fight, but to speak his name with truth. Chapter 5, The Return to Nzum. Bone King met him at the ruins of Red Flame, a valley of bones and broken banners. Arorikpa laughed. Greater than your return? After love softened your edge. Akeg raised his blade. Greater than no. Love made it sharper. They fought from dawn to dusk. Steel and bone. Shadow and wind. Until Akeg drove his dagger not into Arorikpa's heart but into the earth. Greater than I will not kill again. Let your rage die with your name. Arorikpa screamed. And the valley swallowed him whole. Chapter 6, The Nameless Tower. Akeg returned to Amadim. But he refused the title of warrior. He became a gardener. He said, Greater than what I once broke with blade, I now mend with soil. Children would ask him his name, and he would smile. Greater than I am Akeg. I was the Fang of Nzum. But now, I am just a man who remembers. Here begins a tale spun in silver silence, where webs caught time itself and moonlight whispered riddles only tricksters could answer. The Winds of Agata. When rivers speak in tongue. Part 18, The Spider Who Stole Midnight. Chapter 1, The Silkweaver's Secret. In the highlands of Ajelioqua, where wind whistles through hollow stones and fireflies light the paths of elders, a curious thing happened. Night refused to fall. For 7 days, the sun lingered. Crops withered. Children cried from sleeplessness. Drummers grew silent from exhaustion. The elders consulted the oracle of Bazuo, and it wept cobwebs as it spoke. Greater than midnight has been stolen. Not by man, not by God, but by the spider called Nkirka, weaver of lost things. Kaya, Nkemchika, Yukam, and Dunmaji knew the name. Nkirka, the trickster spider said to have webbed the first lay into the mouth of man. She was clever, charming, and utterly uncatchable. They would need to outsmart the creature who laughed at time itself. Chapter 2, The Web Without End. Journey led them to the forest of threads, a land of suspended bridges and glowing strands. Everything was silent. Even the birds whispered. There, Nkirka's web stretched across the treetops, a silver map of time itself, stitched in languages older than dreams. In the center spun the spider herself. Half woman, half spider. Eyes like broken moons. Voice like rustling parchment. She greeted them with laughter. Greater than the little flames chasing lost darkness. You seek midnight? Why? Do you not enjoy the sun? You come stepped forward. Greater than without night, stories end. Dreams rot. Secrets have nowhere to hide. Nkirka paused. Then grinned. Greater than if you want midnight back, win it from me. But not with swords. With riddles. Chapter 3, The Riddle Den Sesh proposed a contest. 3 riddles. Each harder than the last. Fail, and be webbed forever. They agreed. Riddle 1, greater than I have no mouth, yet I tell every tale. I die each morning, yet never wail. What am I? Dunmagi answered, greater than a dream. Nkirka smiled. A thread snapped. The sun dimmed. Riddle 2, greater than born of silence, feared by song. I am older than bone but gone in a blink. What am I? Nkemchika whispered, greater than a shadow. Another strand broke. The wind grew cooler. Final riddle, greater than what is the one thing I cannot catch in my web? Kaya stepped forward, heart pounding. Greater than a choice freely made. Silence. Then Nkirka laughed so hard the trees shook. Greater than you've won. Take your midnight. But beware darkness freed must feed. She released a black pearl, wrapped in thread. Chapter 4, The Return of Midnight. He returned to Ejelikwa and released the pearl into the sky. The sun sighed. The stars blinked. And midnight flowed back into the world like ink returning to a quill. Children dreamed again. Drummers found their rhythm. But sometimes, when the wind brushes the cheeks of sleeping babes, a thin voice giggles, greater than you owe me a 4th riddle. And parents tuck their children tighter, whispering, greater than beware the spider who listens at the edge of dreams. Chapter 5, The Spinner's Bargain. Years later, a child named Obadiah, born at the very moment midnight returned, began weaving webs between trees using only her fingers. When asked how she learned it, she replied, greater than the spider comes sometimes. She tells me stories no one else remembers. And Kaya, old and wise, only smiled. Greater than let her learn. Even tricksters need students.